All right, everyone, welcome back to Get NIST-y, the series that breaks compliance out of the checkbox trap and turns it into a real security advantage. No fluff, no FUD, just practical strategies to make compliance work for your MSP. I'm Jared Kasner, and I'm joined as always by my co-founder of Blacksmith InfoSec and co-host of Get NIST-y, Michael Zabarski. Now, normally Mike and I edit the questions down to be really concise, but today the questions were just too good not to share in their entirety. Little trigger warning for you. We're going to dive into the topic of AI yet again. So if you're not interested in hearing another AI podcast this week, this is your chance to tune out. Now, that said, these are some fun questions, and I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. Mike, you want to kick us off with our first question today?
Sure. I'm trying really hard not to become the AI's bad guy because honestly, AI has been stupidly useful for our MSP. We use it for ticket summaries, internal SOP drafts, client facing explanations, PowerShell cleanup, policy first drafts, and generally turning 45 minutes of brain fog into 8 minutes of usable output. But holy hell, every vendor we use now seems to be adding AI like it's 1996 and someone just discovered flashing banner ads and MIDI files. My PSA has AI, my RMM has AI, my documentation platform has AI, my quoting tool has AI. I'm pretty sure my coffee maker is one firmware update away from asking me if I want to optimize my caffeine journey. The problem is that half of these features don't seem to solve a real problem, they're just there. A shiny button, a new tab, a vague promise that it will save time or unlock insights, which usually means it produces a mediocre paragraph I now have to babysit. As an MSP owner, how do I separate useful AI from vendor AI slop? What questions should I be asking before I let my team actually use these features with my client data?
Ooh, that
I
last one
really
really.
like it a lot more when you pare all these questions down that we get.
And this is why we just couldn't edit this question down. Like this is the sort of question that we normally get is sort of this long, or at least a little bit more context. We, like I said, we normally boil it down. Heck, we even use AI to summarize these questions sometimes, right? Like we are very much the advocates for using AI. I think Mike and I have talked about this a few times that really the key to using AI is using AI thoughtfully, and that comes down to thinking about the inputs and reasoning about the outputs. Um, so how do I separate useful AI from vendor AI slop? Let's tackle that piece of it first because I think the second piece of it is really kind of the meat and potatoes of what we're doing. But Mike, how do you separate useful AI from vendor AI slop or micro
Yeah.
slop as Tom Lawrence would have us?
So I think you start by figuring out like what problem is this actually solving for. Is this actually solving? Is this actually saving me time, or is this doing something that I normally wouldn't do? And you talk about this all the time, Jared, right? All the note takers in the meetings. It's no, you're not saving me time actually, but guess what? You're actually doing a function that I realistically wouldn't do normally, and it's a useful function because I can refer back to notes later. Um, the other piece is understanding what AI is actually doing and what you need it to do. And there's definitely a big issue right now in the market with if your tool doesn't have AI, your marketing department can't do anything. Um, we see it where our accounting software slapped AI into the platform, made it that we couldn't disable it. And so now we're stuck with it and we don't want it, don't need it, and couldn't care less. Um, and
I'm actually going to
so,
take that a step further. I actually do care quite a lot about it, and I care only because I really desperately do not want AI anywhere near my financial records.
yeah, very fair.
So,
So,
like, and yeah, now we're sort of digressing into the second
not
half
the
of the
care that I
question.
was talking about, but yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, and so, how do you actually differentiate between what's useful and what's not? Figure out what your process is, right? Figure out what you do, how you do it, and how it actually benefits you, and then see if the outputs actually help you or whether they give you nonsense that as the question asker um, asked of like now I have to sit here and babysit this paragraph. Like that's not useful. You've
Yep.
just created more work for you. It's doing I don't know if it's doing negative work, but it's definitely not uh, solving a problem for you necessarily as well as you'd like. And so this goes back to Map out your process. Same thing you do for automation. Then see where AI fits into that process, what it'll actually expedite, and then see if it expedites it well, or whether it is going to give you useless information that's going to make it that much harder. Because now not only do you have to babysit it, but you have to keep an eye on the babysitting, because if you're not there and someone else does it and they don't babysit it, now you produce something that's garbage that could come back and impact you.
Yep. No, I think that's really a fair point. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. There was Ronnie Parasella at Channel Pro in Charlotte talked about this. Automation or process is your engine. AI is the turbo boost that you stick on top of that to automate things, right? And so think about the things that you're doing and how you can do it effectively. Because at the end of the day, if you try to automate something that you don't have clearly defined, you're going to go really quickly in the wrong direction, and bad things are going to happen. So, because I really want to get into the second half of this question, I'm going to put a pin in this here. I think we've done a good job of answering the first piece of this. So how do you send it? How do you separate useful AI from vendor AI? Slop. You just you're going to know when you see it. It's the old definition of porn. You know when you see it, right? So there we go. All right. So what questions should I be asking before I let my team actually use these features with client data? I'm going to omit the word client here for just a second, like data, period. What are you thinking about before you let an AI system loose on your data? And I want to do a quick anecdote, Mike, before we get into this question, right? Because I think this is actually a very salient point here. I was having dinner with a friend of mine on Friday night who is a veterinarian. He had a patient come in. He diagnosed the pet, gave up an estimate, and said, "Here's what it's going to cost to fix your dog." And the patient then turned around, uploaded that invoice or that quote into Claude, and came back saying, "Actually, it looks like this vet down the street is going to be a better fit for my needs and is going to be cheaper." And so, first of all, I want to just digress here for a second on this story, even, which is this is the definition of, like, somebody, I forgot who it was, but somebody the other day defined this as a type of person who is an asshole, who just goes and verifies everything with ChatGPT or Claude. So, like, separate out the assholeness of this situation. But then the question came back, like, wait a second, all the pricing information for veterinarians is private data. It's not public. So how is Claude able to go out and actually collect this information, right? So somewhere along the way, there has been a sufficient amount of non-public data being introduced into Claude that it is able, either it's able to go out and use the non-public information that it shouldn't have access to, or it's completely hallucinating this, in which case it's causing either problems also, right? So again, it comes back to think about the inputs and reason about the outputs, right? And so that there's my little anecdote that is sort of related to all this, which is, like, do not assume that the data that you are inputting into an LLM is going to stay private.
Yes. And we have seen this, especially on the free tier of LLMs, it will definitely not stay private. And we've seen this time and time again. And we've talked about it on here with the court case in Virginia, where they basically ruled that they broke attorney-client privilege by tossing stuff into ChatGPT. Like, especially on the free tier, assume it's not private. If you're not in the free tier, make sure your settings are configured to keep it private and not train the model. But
make sure you have a strong data processing agreement in place that has zero data retention, right?
Yep.
There's so much to unpack here, but again, think about the inputs. What type of customer data or data period are you putting into this system? If you're going to assume that it's just like Google, anything you put into it becomes part of the public record effectively, right? Now, Google's not necessarily putting all of your searches public. Actually, a real quick anecdote about Google. This is going back to like 2005. I happened to be out at the Google headquarters in Mountain View as a visitor, and I'm sitting in the lobby, and it was at the time that, first of all, Google search volume wasn't that high, but you watch the searches scrolling, and it was a live feed of every Google search that was going on anywhere in the world. And so at like 9 o'clock in the morning in Mountain View, California, I'm watching first, pretty innocuous stuff, cat videos, things like that. And then it starts going into escort service in Lexington, Kentucky. And then it goes deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole of, and I'll spare you all the graphic details, but it was really entertaining to be sitting in the lobby of Google's headquarters, watching these like increasingly aggressive searches for solicitation going on in public, right? And so, sure, maybe your Google searches are not a matter of public record, but they are being tied to your account. The same thing is true for anything like all the data that's going into LLMs right now. If you think that these companies have your best interest in heart and are not tracking the types of things you're doing and how you're doing it and the data that you're using for it, and you don't have really strong legal protections in place, you're really missing a trick here. And like you have to be very thoughtful about the type of data that goes into the systems, even when you have a strong data protection agreement. I have not gotten a whole lot of warm fuzzies that these companies, when we've seen the number of vulnerabilities in all their platforms and things like that, I have not gotten the warm fuzzy that these companies that are going so quickly and doing so many really cool things for us are keeping our data as safe as they can and should be.
Yeah, so they're 100% not. But also, I'm going to say something that I know you're all going to hate me for, but read the contracts. I know that's very passe and no one reads contracts anymore, but read the contracts. I've dealt with AI companies before where their MSA which is the Master Service Agreement, and their DPA, their Data Processing Agreement, had clear conflicts between the two, and they're both issued by the same company. And when I try to get clarity of like, hey, which one of these is the ruling document, like I couldn't get a straight answer. And so we end up not doing business with them. And so read the contracts.
That's actually a great way to segue into our second question. So I'm going to go ahead and read that one, Mike, and then I'm going to turn the mic back over to you to keep on that read the contract thread here. So question number 2 today: vendors are rolling out AI features into tools we already pay for. And suddenly I'm supposed to believe that all the legal, privacy, compliance stuff is magically handled because there's probably maybe a DPA somewhere inside the MSA, which links to a privacy policy, which links to a subprocessors page, which links to a trust center that requires a login, 3 NDAs, and a blood sacrifice. Please do not sacrifice any goats. No goats were harmed in the filming of this show. Anyhow, minor digression here. Anyhow, continuing the question. And then the actual consent model seems to be, we updated our terms. By continuing to use this product, you agree. Well, cool. Very normal, very transparent. Definitely how I want to make decisions about whether client ticket data, configs, documentation, emails, contracts, or security findings are being shoved into an AI feature. As an MSP, what should I expect from vendors before I enable AI features? Should there be a separate DPA, a separate AI addendum, a click-through, an opt-in? Or am I being unreasonable because apparently every SaaS company has decided that Trust Us Bro is now a compliance framework? As a SaaS vendor, I'll just say, trust me, bro. That's all good.
Well, that was my first comment is Trust Us Bro is definitely the right way to do this.
There's a big /S for anybody who's not following along. This is like those two, very much sarcasm. In case it didn't come through, hopefully it did. But anyhow, like Trust Us Bro is not a compliance framework. Period. All right.
Not yet. Not till I spin up my own compliance framework. Call it the Tub framework. So yeah, again, different vendors are going to handle this differently. Some of them will have a separate DPA. Some of them will update their MSA. Some of them will update their terms of and conditions or terms of service. Sometimes there'll be a separate AI addendum. Sometimes they'll notify you of it. Sometimes it'll be a cool enjoy. None of it's great. It's easier when you're going into a new contract to review all that stuff than a vendor that's deeply embedded in your organization that you use day in day out, all of a sudden adding it and not giving you a choice or option to even turn it off, because we've seen that. At least most vendors are allowing you to turn off and say, hey, I do not want to use AI. Other vendors are not doing that. I'm not going to call out any vendors by name. But there's definitely some vendors on my shit list about that. And so, you will see the outcomes, right? You will see all of a sudden all the marketing hype. When you log into the portal, you'll see 20 pop-ups. Hey, we've added AI, and here's where different ways you can use it, and blah, blah, blah. Um, and so it's not going to go, for most vendors, it's not going to go silently. So you'll at least understand that, hey, AI is being used. And then you can start doing some digging and figuring out, what models are they using underneath? What are the underlying models? Are they allowed to change the models? Are they allowed to send your data to a different country? Because there's also, especially for people listening in England, there's GDPR implications. There's all sorts of other implications. Even for the US, we've got certain countries where we don't allow data to go to. And so, what does that look like? How's it managed? Who has access to it all of a sudden? Is it, Claude, or is it Bojangles AI out of, I don't know why I picked Bojangles, uh, out of someone's basement, right? And maybe that basement model is actually a more secure model and better model because they have a lot of resiliency and a lot of privacy controls built around that model. And you may have more say in that model because smaller shops standing up a private AI model. So like there's going to be trade-offs, um, and you have to figure out what works for your organization and what doesn't, um, and go through and actually document, which SaaS providers are leveraging AI, where is AI used, is it turned on, who's responsible for managing it, what kind of data do you have stored in there, because if you are a healthcare organization using an EMR and all of a sudden the EMR ties into some random AI service, guess what? Now all your PHI is going to that third party service. That maybe it's not a problem. Maybe it is. It depends how it's all configured and what security measures are in place and what kind of BAAs are in place and the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. Now, the caveat with all of this, of course, is many of you have signed contracts, and I won't again name names, but when I make this comment, you'll all know exactly what I'm talking about. There are some very large vendors in the space who are locking MSPs into 3-year contracts. Does your 3-year contract allow you to get out if there's a material change in service? If all of a sudden that 3-year contract,
That's a great call out, Jared.
right? If all of a sudden your 3-year contract that you're locked into that you can't get out of adds AI services into it that you're not aware of or that you can't opt into or opt out of, and all of your data, and and honestly, there, like the scary part for me is it's one thing to see the features showing up in your dashboard. What about all the stuff that your vendors are doing behind the scenes that you're not aware of, right? Are they going through and looking at like, hey, I want to do some analysis of all of the different types of tickets that are coming into every PSA across the board, so I can think about that from a project management standpoint or product management standpoint, right? What are your vendors using AI for that you're not aware of because it's not being surfaced publicly? And so I don't say that to scare you, right? Like the whole premise of this show is to be FUD free, right? And so I appreciate that's kind of a scary question to be asking, but like, are you having these conversations with your vendors and asking them, what are you doing? How are you using AI? Are your vendors being open and transparent with you about what they're doing with AI and your data? What is your existing, forget about any of the new AI features. Look at the master services agreement that you entered into. What does that allow your vendor to do with your data? Is it your data or is it their data? How are they treating it? Are they treating it as if it's your data or their data? Right? These are the types of questions that you should be asking before. Forget about AI for just a second here. Like think about what you've already agreed to in the first. Like, for anyhow, I just there are some people who make some very well intentioned but very poor choices about how they treat customer data. And I will say that both for the vendors and for MSPs for that matter, right? MSPs do not always treat customer data as securely as they should be doing. And so, again, this goes back to Mike's comment from 10 minutes ago. Read your contracts. This is a great place, by the way. Like, do not substitute a lawyer for AI or vice versa, right? But it's totally fine before you sign a contract, if you want to have AI go and summarize it, that's all well and good. Maybe have it point out some legal holes that you need to look into. But don't just say, oh, AI summarized it and said it's fine for me to sign, so I can go ahead and sign it. Don't substitute that AI scan for having an actual lawyer review it, right? Like think about the things that you're going to do and why you're doing that. And like, God, for the love of all things holy, read your contracts. Again, I think I've talked about this once before. Somebody sent me an NDA on via DocuSign, and I needed to go sign. Well, I had to click through 7 different things with DocuSign to get it to not summarize the NDA for me. It's like a page and a half long contract, and I can read an NDA and I can see, are the terms mutual? How long does it last for? Things like, right? Those are the things that I care about, and I need to just go through and read that myself. I don't need an AI summary for this crap. I want to read it myself. Like, you have to actually be reading these things yourself. Rant over. Breath. Go, Mike.
Yeah. No, I think the other piece, and you kind of talked about this, but where I really like to use AI when it comes to contracts is, as you pointed out, uploading the contract in there, asking it the question, and then when you engage with the attorney, provide them with that context. That way, you'll save some money because they'll have a good starting point. They're not going to necessarily, again, most lawyers are going to do the same thing to begin with, anyways, as a starting point. But you can do that and just say, hey, here's the 5 questions that AI has already pointed out. Is there anything else that's missing? And so that way they're not going to be spinning cycles and stuff you're already aware of. Or maybe they'll say, hey, AI pointed this out, but this really isn't an issue, so you don't need to worry about this. Because I've seen that as well, because AI is AI.
Yeah. And do yourself a favor. Don't be an asshole, right? If you have the lawyer start with it, don't then have AI review it and say, well, what about X, Y, and Z after the fact, right? Like, don't be the asshole. For what it's worth, like, anyhow, not that I have. It's a sore subject for me. I've had a couple of friends of mine who are going through SOC 2 audits and things like that have come to me with questions, and it's like I give them the answer, and then they come back and say, "Well, but Claude said, or ChatGPT said, I don't care what those things said. Like, you asked me for my expert opinion. Here's my expert opinion. Take it or leave it." Like,
Yeah.
All right. So, should there be a separate DPA, a separate AI addendum? Yes and yes, or maybe it's yes or yes, right? Think about, that's my view, is that if a vendor is adding a material change to their product, there should be a material change to their licensing terms, period. Now,
And
not every vendor is going to do that.
Their pricing terms.
Which may honestly may also increase or change their pricing terms, right? Right now, we're in this like unique and wonderful space where AI is heavily subsidized. Silicon Valley, venture capital, private equity, all the people that are pouring billions and billions of dollars into AI models right now are heavily subsidizing this. This is like Uber and Lyft 15 years ago, where it was the cheapest way to get around. Guess what? Those are as expensive or more expensive than a cab right now. But because we're so used to Ubering everywhere, we don't even think about jumping into a cab anymore, right? The same thing is true for AI. This is that like heavily subsidized period where everything is really inexpensive, and so at some point, the cost per token is going to have to go up to meet the realities of how much infrastructure they've put into place in order to support these things. And so, your pricing, the more AI features are being added to the products you're using, the pricing is necessarily going to have to increase over time in order to support the profit margins that your vendors are used to. And so, guess what? The more that's coming in there, like, think about that also. But again, which comes back to, is it a separate DPA, a separate AI addendum, something? Almost certainly there needs to be contractual changes that come into place. Again, I'm not a lawyer. Ask your lawyer what is and is not acceptable and what you can and can't get out of in terms of your contracts based on material changes to the product that's being offered. But from my perspective, I am very heavily moving away from products that are forcing AI upon me, especially in ways that are not helpful, and moving towards products that are either allowing an opt-in or just not including it at all, or doing it in ways that are extremely helpful, right? So being very thoughtful about the products that I'm using and moving away from the ones that are just adding the AI slop to everything, because it's, especially when they are not updating their contract terms accordingly.
Now, Jared, you said you're not a lawyer. Do you at least play a lawyer on TV?
Sometimes I'm not an earth lawyer. It's like I'm a made up lawyer in a fictional universe that only I exist in. But
Perfect.
no, again, I'm perfectly happy to read a contract. At the end of the day, a contract should be very clear about what is and is not allowed. Um, there's a lot of legalese that goes into these things, and that's where again AI can help you translate some of the legalese into whatever your native tongue is, whether it's English or something else. Um, but read the contracts. For the love of all that's holy, read the contracts.
So the big takeaway around AI is read the contracts.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I'll go back to. I think the two big takeaways are use AI where it makes sense,
Yep.
right? I'm not saying don't use AI. I love AI. I use it every day. Use AI where it makes sense, but also read your contracts.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing, right? At the end of the day, like you need to protect your data. And if you don't know where your data is going or what's being done with it, you have no way of protecting it. So you need to understand that flow in that process.
So are you that sounds an awful lot like saying risk mitigation?
No, I would never say risk mitigation. I say trust is bro.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we have sufficiently answered these questions. Please, to the askers of these questions, first of all, thank you for really entertaining us with these questions. Like, I love those. That's why, again, we didn't redact them or make them a little bit more concise this week. So, thank you very much to our question askers. Kudos to the entertaining questions. Um, Mike, any closing words for today?
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's content, please share this episode with a friend. If you joined us for the first time, hitting the follow button helps us discover us in the future and means you won't miss an episode. And as always, you can submit your own questions at blacksmithinfosec.com/ask, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Get NIST-y.